Hello, rulers. The school day is out. The kids are away. It's time for lesson planning. Welcome back. We are here to have our new show talking about all about running a specific deck into a specific scenario to help you better understand how to pilot it and better understand how to make those decision trees yourself. I am joined tonight by the one, the only GP Minnesota winner, Mike Rance. How's it going, buddy?
It's going good. Thank you for the intro. I keep forgetting that I did it. So
yeah, you did it. Like, you're a winner. Yeah. A winner is you. Before we get into too much, I do want to go through, obviously, so much thanks to everybody who is watching and supporting us. If you feel like supporting us, you can click that join button down below. I do want to make note that tonight, the chat is completely open to everybody who's here, thanks to tonight's sponsor, Jesse James Comics, located in Glendale, Arizona. They were the ones who ran GP Arizona last year. Wonderful store. They are working really hard to continue to expand and maintain their Force of Will community. You can check them out in the links down below to get connected to them, as well as just check out their website. Here's where they're located in Glendale. Right now, they're still kind of being careful with stuff related to COVID, but they're still trying to keep their player base active and engaged and talking. So feel free to reach out to them. And again, huge thanks to them for sponsoring this episode of the podcast and opening up the chat. So
yes,
yeah, everything. Appreciate that for sure. So tonight we are going to be talking about, we wanted to do this pre-Minnesota. Some stuff came up. We didn't get to do it. So now we get to do it post-Minnesota. This idea of racing to the finish. There are certain times in a matchup where you're playing, kind of heavy, quick aggro deck versus heavy, quick aggro deck. And sometimes in those matchups, it can just be like a knockdown, like slugfest of like who can just keep their resonators on board, or like whose resonators are faster or bigger. But there can be a lot more nuance to that than you think. And so we're going to be talking about that. And who else to better do that than the guy who has a lot of different options, Gil Lapis, for how he wants to be aggressive or how he wants to punch your face in. So we're going to be running Gil Lapis. It is one of the new rulers. This is a deck that you have seen played on the channel before. It is the Gil Lapis Burn deck, and we are going to be playing it against a fellow aggressive deck from Mike's perspective of a Magna Stranger stuff aggressive deck. So we're going to be talking about that.
You call it Angel Beats.
We'll just call it Angel Beats. That's an okay anime, I've heard. So anyway, let's go ahead and jump into the game. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it up here. I'm going to talk through the list real quick. So just for those of you who haven't seen it. So obviously, we're playing Gil Lapis. We're primarily using him for Limit Break. We don't really flip him particularly very often in this deck unless we have an abundance of Dark Summonings in our hand and we want to get Lenneth to be able to get that turned on without having to waste a Limit Break on it. You're particularly going to be Limit Breaking Blazer and Gil Lapis, or sorry, Blazer, Gil Lapis, and Sylvia, particularly in the order of Blazer, then Sylvia, then Gil Lapis. And then you're just using some pretty sneaky tricks to make the highest advantage of Blazer to tell your opponent that you don't care what's on their board. They're dead anyway. We're playing 4 World Enders, 4 Yggdrasils, 4 Blazers, 3 Dark Alice Rabbit Princess, who in this deck is a burn spell, 4 Sylvia, the minion of Lapis, 2 Lenneth, the Dark Priestess. The reason why we're playing 2 Lenneth is because if you get one in hand, you still want to have one in deck. It's the old always have 2 of whatever you're searching for.
So don't draw patches.
Yep, don't draw Schrodinger like in the old Dark Alice days.
Yeah.
3 copies of Dark Summoning, primarily because this is one of the biggest cards in the end game for like, oh cool, I know the play line, I know the card I need to be able to push through for lethal. Lenneth is limit broken, I'm gonna go get it. 4 copies of Schrodinger Scry just for some removal protection. Lapis Darkstorm, because if you're playing Gil Lapis, there is 0 reason to not play 4 copies of Darkstorm.
It's free.
It's a free card because it's a moon art. This card is insane. You can cast it off of World Ender. The amount of value you can get off of playing it on the World Ender play turn is insane. So if you're playing Gil Lapis, I think this card's an auto 4 of. Blazers Out of Slaughter, because it's also a burn spell. 2 copies of Black Moon Ray, and then 2 copies of End of the World, which is also a burn spell, which we'll talk about here as we go in. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is starting up the game here. You ready to go, Mike?
Yeah. Wait, you're not playing Sylvia's Burning Flame?
I am not playing Sylvia. That's not a burn spell. It doesn't burn face.
You say that.
It doesn't burn face.
All right. Okay, so now I know what not to fear. Gotcha.
Mike Rance, join my game.
That's me. Angel Beats.
Gil Lapis Burn. Look at this. Look at this nice little new overlay from Untap. We got some color buttons. I like it. By the way, if you haven't already found out, there has been a big update to Untap, and you can now play on mobile devices, which includes tablets. So, no.
Oh, I see how they did the sick. I see how they did the capabilities.
Yeah, it's a click on now instead of a hover over, which I also think is way better.
How do I actually add the counter?
You should just be able to click on it, right? Oh, maybe right click on it. Yeah, right click.
Yep, I see it now. Cool. Okay.
Right? Is it right click? Yes.
It's
okay.
So you actually have to click on. So you have to up the number, and then you have to press add counter.
Sure.
Interesting.
I'm old 5. Particularly, and the reason why we mulled 5 on my side is because we didn't see Yggdrasil and we didn't see World Ender. So yes, there was a Sylvia in that opening hand, but Sylvia by herself is pretty mediocre, and this deck isn't absolutely the just turn things sideways deck. And so a 7/7 just by itself, we can get a lot more value off of it if we get it limit broken. And so we're going to be mulliganing it away. Especially when you're playing against the other aggro decks, sometimes you just want to be able to make sure that your bodies can always be bigger than yours or bigger than theirs, but you also do want to have this idea of being protection plus out value, so you can run your opponent out of gas. And Sylvia doesn't really help us run our opponent out of gas, so that's why we're unless she gets limit broken, which is why we're kind of shipping her for right now. You ready to go, bud?
I'm rolling at 3.
Okie dokie. Draw to play 1. First stone, Black Moon's Memoria. Love to see it. Unfortunately, gotta pass.
That's how we do. All right. Okay, cool. I can still double click to draw. That's nice.
As we do go through things, if you have any questions or anything that you're confused about, feel free to let us know in the chat box. Again, the chat is open tonight to non-members, and we'd love to be able to have that conversation with you. It's why we have this show.
I'm gonna play a Sprout of Treasure Tree, and I'm just gonna pass real quick here.
Sprout of Treasure Tree. Okay, so in the end phase of your turn,
yeah,
we are going to Moonray that tree.
Oh, man, you got anti-stranger stuff.
And the reason why we're doing this here in the end phase is because if he does have value in his hand for being able to produce off of it, we don't want it to be something that he can cast at standard speed. So the fact that he let us go to end phase is really, really good, because if he wants to discard and produce will, he has to use it right now. It has to be a card that's quick cast, and we're hedging our bets that he doesn't. So this feels like a pretty safe time to use this.
Yeah, we don't mind sending that to the grave, actually.
Okie dokie.
Resolves.
Drop turn?
Yep.
Recover, call stone. Draw to play 1. Once again, we're kind of in a weird spot just because of what our hand and stone base is, so we're going to go ahead and say Darkstorm.
The Darkstorm activation is totally fine.
So we'll roll a die here. 4. So this bad boy.
Yep. Accepted.
Honier goes to grave.
And then I choose 1, which will be 2. That one.
Cool. And then we pass turn. Go ahead. So this feels pretty good for us. Again, like we said before, we know that we're playing against a... Sure. We know that we're playing against kind of an aggressive deck. We wanted to kind of rip their hand apart a little bit. That's not something we really want to see, seeing the Morning Angel, because now we know that he's going to get 3 removed from grave. But we're not terribly too concerned about that, because if we know that that's what he's playing, he's probably playing Magna's Angel, and that doesn't have swiftness, which makes us feel a lot more comfortable.
Yep, but I'm just going to do the standard, remove my stuff from the game.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then go to my turn, I'll draw. Ew.
Yeah, ew. That's fair. That's fair.
Let's see. We're gonna tap for a stone. I gotta get used to this now.
Yeah, I do like the new layout. I like that it's not hover over. It makes it a lot.
Yeah,
it makes it a lot easier to not mess up.
Agreed. I'm gonna smack you in the face for 4.
Take 4. Nothing we can do about this. We're just gonna have to take the damage. We're not terribly too concerned. 4 damage is piddly in the long terms of things, which is something also that I think players need to get used to, is like being comfortable with taking damage, like not letting it affect your consideration of what the current game state is.
And then I will pass to you.
Okay, draw, recover, call stone. Draw to play. And then do it again. Another dark
Not
side.
again. It's fine.
And this is what I'm talking about in terms of like why this card is so good. Even outside, like in this scenario, right? The reason why we're a burn aggro deck, but we're playing a discard package. But like our late game, like our mid to late game aggression with the way we built this deck is probably better than his. And so like if we get into an era of 1-for-1s, mine are probably better, especially if we can get to a point where Gil Lapis is flipped. So Darkstorm in this situation is great because we're suddenly going to hit him down to 1 card and we can start answering stuff pretty effectively.
Yep.
So it's good. So
Yep.
we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So middle card for a 4.
Middle card is gone. Send to discard.
Bato and Kusanagi Motoko. I'm glad that's gone.
Yep.
Not having swiftness is great. And then pass turn. That's all I got. Go ahead.
All right. Draw. That could have been a much better draw. Oops. Nope. We'll go to recover. I'll call it stone. All right. All right. We're already here. Cast the angel.
That is an angel.
Enter trigger. Do nothing.
You got it.
Perfect. And I'll swing at you 4 in the air again.
Take 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Pass to you.
Cool. Draw. Before recovery, we're going to go ahead and flash in a Dark Alice.
Cal Summon is good.
Draw. Discard. Draw.
Hey, he found the Lenneth.
Discard. Move to recover.
Oh, jeez, you found all your minions.
Yeah, we found a lot of them pretty quick. Call stone?
Yep.
Draw to play 1. And then we will go double black. So in this scenario, you're definitely right, CCG Genesis. This has definitely been a scenario where very quickly early on, based on our identifying hand, we got to make the determination of that we're actually the controlled, like we're playing control right now in a sense. We're pivoting to that, which is not something that you can always do with the deck that's just turn things sideways. And it's also why sometimes it is helpful to not play decks that are just turn things sideways. Because if we were just playing a turn things sideways deck, we would be in a very bad spot right now because that Magnus Angel is gigantic and it flies.
Yeah.
So like we're on a worse clock than he is in that regard. So by shifting ourselves a little bit and by also building our aggro burn deck in a way that gives us that pivoting, we are in a better scenario overall, which is what we're about to see in a moment. So I'm going to play World Ender.
That seems pretty good.
Yeah. And then I'm going to call Limit Break Sylvia and limit break Lenneth.
Yep. Oh, I see.
Oh, sorry, no. I'm gonna play. That's incorrect. I'm gonna play limit break Lenneth and limit break Gil Lapis.
Okay, there we go.
And the reason why we're doing that is because we have an end of the world.
Yep, all 4 effects.
So we can do all 4 modes. So when that resolves, it resolves in the order of your opponent banishes 2 resonators. So both of Mike's resonators go bye-bye.
Well, before that, actually...
Oh, he's got a card.
I do. I've got Gatekeeper Velsavari for no no benefit whatsoever.
The value.
Yep. And she and Morning Angel are... Oh, sorry. That should go in the discard pile.
Yep. So how big is that Magnus Angel at this point?
13-13 Magnus Angel.
13-13 Magnus Angel. Cool. So then we draw 2 cards, which feels great. Then we get to your opponent discards 2 cards. You have none to discard. And then we get to reanimate 2 bodies. So we're going to reanimate this Lenneth, and we're going to reanimate this Sylvia, who is hiding behind my board at this point. Ta-da! A wonderful card. So then Lenneth is going to trigger because we limit broke her, and we're going to choose to reveal a 12 Apostle from outside the game and put it into the field. I have 3 in the removed from game area in the sideboard of this deck. It is Athena, Phoenix, and Ouroboros. In this scenario, because we have a Magnus Angel on board, we're going to grab Phoenix. Because we want a flying blocker to be able to deal with this Magnus Angel. That can technically trade indefinitely. Although we're not playing any red in this deck, so it really can't.
Seems like a problem.
But he doesn't know that.
Mike doesn't know.
So we're going to go ahead and grab Phoenix here. We're just going to put that into play so I don't have to... That's the wrong card. Jeez Louise. Thank you.
You can put that one into play, I guess.
It's not. Let's not. Let's try Phoenix again. There it is.
Make sure it's the French one again.
No. Phoenix, the Flame of the Wind. Enter. This card deals 300 damage to each resonator my opponent controls.
Oh,
okay, we did it.
You got me.
We got it. And then at that point, we pass turn. Go ahead.
There we go. All right. Draw for turn.
So this feels pretty good for us, right? Like our opponent's in top deck mode. We have 2 blockers to deal with this flyer. We've got a grip full of stuff. This dark summoning becomes any card we want it to be. This dark summoning in our hand becomes any card we need it to be.
You've got a dark summoning in hand, Jeremy?
I do. I have a dark summoning in hand.
Oh my god.
Whoa, goodness.
Just start digging, boys.
Yep. Dark Alice with no cards in hand.
Yep.
Value.
That seems pretty bad, actually. We'll discard that because that's not doing anything for our gameplay right now.
I don't think so.
Yes, I see.
Are we sacrificing Dark Alice?
Big maybe. No, you know what? We're a face deck.
Okay.
Sack the stone.
I don't hate that, actually.
I don't hate it either.
In this scenario, right?
I need a card. We're going to go into combat, though.
Yeah.
I'm going to attempt to smack you in the face for 13.
I will attempt to block with the Phoenix.
The Phoenix block is good.
Okay, Phoenix is dead.
Bam. Got him.
Pay a red that I don't have, bring Phoenix back.
That's how we play this game, boys.
Value.
And, looks like my turn. I'll pass.
Okay, draw. Recover. Let's see. How are we going to do this? We are going to produce Black and Moon.
Yep.
And we are going to use the moon for a dark summoning.
Oh, it is a moon art.
It is a moon art.
That is A-okay.
Okay. Oop.
No,
Yeah,
I wish I
'cause-
kept the defense stance.
I mean, if you would grab to the defense, yeah, that's fair. I probably wouldn't have cast it, but I also didn't know that you had defense stance. So like,
True.
Okay, so that goes there. So we've got black floating. You will do. Let's see. Ta-da! I will do World Ender.
World Ender.
And I'm going to stack Gil Lapis's triggers in the following order. The first ability that's going to resolve the first choice is look at top 3. The second choice will be call a limit break. And so the reason why we're doing this is because you call limit break as the choice is resolving. So by being able to look at the top 3, I lost Mike Rance. By being able to, let's see, where is it? Peep the top 3. By looking at the top 3, I can kind of in my mind say, okay, maybe I change what I'm limit breaking based on what I grab. So I'm going to show you that I grabbed the Blazer.
Perfect. Seems like a good card.
Seems like a really good card. And then I'm going to call the limit break of Blazer. And then I'm going to get rid of this World Ender that's on the board because that Mythic trigger is going to resolve. I'm going to call a Stone. Try to play. We get another Moonshade. I'm going to use the black that I have floating to play Blazer.
Blazer is played.
And then we're going to go into combat.
Yep.
We're going to have, let's see. How big is that Magna's Angel right now?
That is a 13-13.
13-13. Cool. Lenneth is going to swing in the air at you for 10.
Oh, she does have flying.
Yes, she does.
Yeah.
When she's limit broken.
We eat the 10. How much is that?
And I gain 10.
Good old Drainbane.
Drainbane. We are going to swing our Dark Alice at your Magna's Angel.
I will attempt to block with my own Dark Alice.
We will respond. We are going to cast Blazer's Art of Slaughter. We have a limit broken Blazer. So we are going to choose your Dark Alice and my Blazer.
Aha, look at this guy.
Good?
That resolves.
Cool. Blazer trigger then goes on the stack because we have limit broken him. And we are going to target your Magna's Angel for let's see, it's a 13-13, right? We are going to target that Magna's Angel for 11 damage and you for 1 damage.
I will take the 1 and the 11 goes there and then the Dark Alice trades in.
Correct.
Dead.
And now Sylvia's going to go with a generic 7 damage at your face.
7 gets heated.
And then we're going to play a Sylvia and go 7 damage at your face.
7 has been taken.
And so the reason why we're putting at this point, right? Like we could wait to hold on to that Sylvia to see if there's something else that we want to do. There's 2 reasons why we're playing it now. One, he only has 1 card in his hand, right? So if it's a form of removal, he probably would have already used it. If it's a resonator right now, he needed to be able to block us with, he probably would have already used it. Having seen that there is a defense stance in his graveyard, we know there's a possibility for cancels, but he didn't use it on the Blazer's Art of Slaughter, which makes us feel pretty confident that it's not a cancel. So there's not really much in this situation that makes us feel uncomfortable for what that 1 card in play is, but it puts more pressure on him on the back foot in top deck mode if we put more bodies on board. And next turn, the other thing is we want to get that Sylvia on board now, because once we flip Gil Lapis, we don't have a way to cast her. So, but if we can next turn just flip Gil Lapis, we can get the 3rd Sylvia out of the deck, turn all of them on and finish the game that way. So we're definitely we've shifted to kind of turning from the control deck to the gas pedal. We feel pretty confident that there's not going to be pushback on us, so we're going to be able to close out the game, which is why
the tempo's back in your favor rather than mine.
Right, which is why we feel comfortable turning on the gas and kind of turning into this turn things sideways version, or like mode. So then we just pass turn.
Yep. I'll go to draw. Before untap.
Yeah.
It's up to cast the Gatekeeper.
Yep.
Bring that to the removed area to draw a card. Nice. And then you go to untap. Call a stone. And we pass.
Cool. Draw.
Yep.
Recover. We will 1, 2, 3. We will attempt to perform the judgment effect of Gil Lapis.
You may perform the judgment effect of Gil Lapis.
Gil Lapis enter trigger.
Enter trigger resolves.
Pardon my language for doing that. For those of you who are maybe confused, that language just comes to us from one Brandon Bremont, because technically judgment uses the chase. There's very few times. There's very few times in a game, very few sequences where that really matters. But recognizing the fact that judgment uses the chase is important, because there are some times where you can mess your opponent up by responding before their J ruler hits the field. Some notable ones in Forcible's history include killing their whole board before a Sylvia enters play, so it has to kill itself. And there's some other things too. So like recognizing that you don't just pay 3 and immediately flip, like you pay 3, put it on chase, is something to be aware of, because there are some times where you could just set your opponent up to be in a bad spot. Gil Lapis is not one such ruler that it's very easy to set him up for. Usually rulers that say like on enter go get a thing, it usually doesn't matter, and in fact you kind of want to wait, because if you do something before they go get a thing, you actually give them knowledge to then be able to adjust what they're going to go get, which is one of the reasons why those kind of enter effects have always been so powerful. Unless it's like Brunhild. Like Brunhild is one of the most susceptible ones, because it's like they're going to flip. Okay, cool, you RFG their whole graveyard, then Brunhild's, worthless. But like the utility of these rulers like Dark Alice or Magna or Gil Lapis kind of lends it to, doesn't really work super great. And so we're going to do exactly what we said we were going to do. We're going to go grab a Sylvia.
Yep.
Which is going to limit break Sylvia because of Gil Lapis' effect. And now we're just going to push
3 limit broken Sylvias.
Now we're just going to push into combat.
Before you do that, can you like cast a card from your hand real quick? Just any card, as long as it's castable.
Okay, sure.
All right, cool.
We'll play Blazer.
All right. I'm gonna defense stance that.
Cool. It's valid. Cool. We'll swing in for lethal.
Yep.
Game 2s.
You know I had to do it that way.
Yeah, of course.
Hey man, do you mind playing a card?
I would really like to have 0 cards in hand when I die. You mind helping me out here?
Yeah, pretty much. It has to be a flawless victory. That's the problem.
Yeah, it has to be. So, at that point in time, do you want to go first or second? We put me on first, so yeah, probably best to see kind of what this looks like when the deck is going second.
Yep. Especially important is that this deck does not work if it has no hand. So going first is really nice.
Yeah, because you don't get your stuff discarded quickly.
Yeah.
It's fair.
So we'll draw 5. This actually looks like to the bottom. To the bottom. I think I do a 3 to the bottom.
I'll
Sounds
do
right.
2 to the bottom. Cool.
Started from the bottom.
Now we're here.
Now we're
Again,
here.
like I said, for those of you who are watching, if you have any questions about what you're seeing, or like questions about why we're making decisions we want to make, or if you've had questions from your own games that you want to talk about, please let us know. That's what this format is. That's what this night is all about, really. And again, thanks to our sponsor, Jesse James Comics. The members, the chat is open to anybody tonight, not members only. So we want to be able to have that conversation with you. So, okay, cool. Callstone pass. Draw turn.
Classic.
So this is actually an interesting situation for us with what our hand is. So, Mike, I would be interested to hear what we're going to go ahead and draw our stone to play, right? So clearly when you're in a Regalia deck format, if you have the opportunity to go, especially when you know that your opponent doesn't have a cancel, as far as we can tell, knowing the Gambit of Strangers, there's not a 1-drop green or 1-drop white cancel. So we feel pretty confident in being able to energize out this World Ender. This just gives us a lot of value. So we're in an interesting spot here. We're going to do what we said before, which is where we're going to go ahead and look at top 3 and then pick a limit break. And the reason why we're doing that in this situation, as opposed to just straight calling limit break, in looking at this, you could choose the idea of limit break Gil Lapis, limit break Blazer, which is in our hand, to just do it early. But the reason why we don't want to do that right now is because we have this Yggdrasil in our hand, which also essentially just says pay 3, get Judgment, and get Gil Lapis when we need it. And like we said in the intro, this deck doesn't always want to just have Gil Lapis limit broken super early. You want to try to get more value off of your limit breaks and anything else. And as we previously said, card advantage in some of these matchups is king. So we're going to go ahead.
I've heard more cards is better than less cards.
I have also heard that. So we're going to look at the top 3. We're going to see what we have here. It's an interesting call. We are going to... Knowing that we have a cancel deck and kind of knowing what our game plan of what our hand is right now, we're actually going to go ahead and grab this Sylvia.
A wise choice.
Our 3 options here were Lenneth, which is an auto not grab, End of the World, and then Sylvia. And the reason why we're grabbing the Sylvia here is because we have Dark Summoning in our hand. So if we need to, we can get End of the World later. And we want Lenneth, and we know that at that point in time, we're going to be limit breaking Lenneth anyway. So we want her in the deck, right? So now we're at an interesting crossroads here, which I would be interested to hear your argument either way, Mike, as we're talking about. This is like genuinely like there are 3 different options that we could take, all of which are viable. So it's kind of like a good moment. We can either choose to limit break Sylvia, play her and push right now, immediately push 1,000 damage into your face. We can choose to limit break Blazer, play the Blazer, but that isn't the best option because we have Blazer's Art of Slaughter in our hand, but we would be tapped out going into your turn because we'd have to use the World Ender to play Blazer. So that feels a little bit inefficient, feels a little bit weird. But at the same time, having a 12/12 on board, pretty solid, right? Option 3 is we Darkstorm you, which is always good, but right now we're kind of tempo favored. So if we're tempo favored, we probably want to take advantage of that by putting a threat on board that also at the same time can serve as a removal spell in future turns. So of those 3...
I'm thinking you're correct in your choice of limit breaking Sylvia and swinging with her, because you see my Wind Lightstone, and you know for the fact that I cannot play the Gatekeeper Belsavari right now.
Correct.
Know that my choices are limited to pretty much just Dark Gallus and Morning Angel from what you know about my deck. I don't have the Genesis up to play out a 2-cost. The 1-cost strangers in here are very weak.
Yep.
So I think your best bet is, and especially because something very important to know about Sylvia compared to her J-Ruler counterpart from the ye olden days is that when she swings, she only deals damage to a target J resonator your opponent controls.
Right. So she's pretty safe to just swing in. And then at that point in time, like, if by instance there is a 1-drop instant speed removal spell, we were going to get hit by that anyway. So it's like there's no reason to not just let it hit us.
The chance you hit it with your Lapse Darkstorm is so low, you might as well just
slam.
Hedge your bet.
Hedge your bets.
Yeah.
2, if he doesn't have a removal, then that puts Mike in a position where he has to play a little bit awkwardly, because then he has to choose on his turn, do I have to spend time on my turn trying to remove it? therefore going further behind in tempo because, again, he spent cards to answer my card, so he falls further behind at that point? Or does he just try to commit to his game plan and have to play through a Sylvia, which can be really, really hard for him to deal with because of her ping effects? So, really quick to answer a question. Oracion says, does playing a Resonator count as a chance? My opponent plays 2 Resonators. Can I use Severing Winds on the second Resonator? Playing a Resonator does not count as a chance, but it does. Anything that you are casting counts as a spell. So Severing Winds could be used on a Resonator if it's the second card played that turn. Severing Winds specifically says if it's the second spell, if your opponent has played 2 or more spells this turn, this card is free. So there you have it. So we're going to go ahead and go with the Sylvia line. We're going to call Limit Break Sylvia. And we're going to play her. And then we're going to go to combat. And we're going to swing at your face for 10.
I take the 10.
Hooray. And then at that point in time, we pass the turn.
Yep. Now I'll draw for turn. Oh, yikes, this hand. But that's cool, because this is important knowledge to know.
Yeah.
So we're getting this. So we're just going to do it ahead of time anyway. We're going to cast the Gatekeeper.
Sure.
We're going to remove 1, a Taifuu, 3, there we go, 3, and 4 to draw 4.
Oof. Okay. Sounds good to me.
Hand is a little awkward, unfortunately, but that's fine.
It happens. Magna.
It got more awkward.
It got more awkward? Oh, no. Mike.
Welcome to Gusting Sky's life, boys.
That's fair.
It hurt me in the tournament. It's hurting me now. That's all the card does.
It's because it's not Deepwood.
But, it's true. It's an inferior stone, is what I'll call it.
Anything else, sir?
No, that's all I've got.
So this is what we're talking about. Like we get to capitalize on this scenario, right? So the Gusting Skies didn't help Mike at all. We learned that his hand is pretty awkward here. There's an argument to be made on Mike's side to call Stone Pass with that Rachis, particularly because of the fact that it has 1100 defense, so it can survive a ping from the Sylvia and then tap something down. There's an argument to that. I think still getting the Velsivaria out is still a better call. The problem is that Gatekeeper is not, just to try to fix his hand to be a little bit better, the problem is that Gatekeeper is still just going to take the damage from Sylvia and not going to serve as a blocker. So, the argument here is for holding up the Rachis is, you let... The risky part there is, he has to either accept 10 and then try to tap down something else, or he plays it preemptively to tap down the Sylvia and then opens himself up to whatever else I'm going to play for that turn. Both situations not super great. If Mike was ahead on tempo, it definitely would be a good play. But again, we took the risk of putting out the Sylvia. It's definitely paid off because now we've got Mike in a pretty bad back foot because we have a 0-cost removal spell in the form of Sylvia attacking, which feels great. So we'll draw, recover, call our stone. Oh, I guess we are playing red. Whoops. Sorry, I lied earlier. We have 1 Scorched Bale stone. I forgot. I forgot that we're playing 1 Scorched Bales purely so that we can do Athena, burn you single time, burn us to get some counters.
Didn't even put 2 in for the Phoenix. I see you.
Didn't even put 2 in for the Phoenix. So in this point, what we're going to do is we know our opponent is... Here's what we're going to do first. We're going to go ahead and start by doing Dark Storm.
Yep, good call, because that I'm trying to fish for something with my hand.
This, even if we didn't have Mike to be able to talk to, the fact that he proactively tapped to put in this card into play makes us feel like this hand is awkward, right? And so any point in time where we can make that more awkward by ripping cards is better for us. So we're going to go ahead and do the Dark Storm here.
Yep, that is fine.
5, so far left.
Yep. This one, right?
I'll shake it. Shake it. Whoop.
Yeah. Yep, there you go. Okay, because it's sort of awkward.
Yeah, it's backwards. And then discard. So, and then, as weird as it might seem to do this, we're actually going to do it again.
A good call, actually.
Yeah, because again, we're trying to capitalize on the fact that we know that we're going to be able to kill his 1-drop. His Gusting Skystone didn't really get him much last turn. Now we're sitting at he's already used up a draw card that we're going to be able to kill and push through another 10 damage. And once again, we're putting him back down to being at so few resources, and we have a 0 mana removal spell. So like this is helping us race to the finish. We're trying to clear the path to make sure that he doesn't have anything that could stop us from closing the game out faster. So we'll do this. Shake.
Gone. Oh, whoops. Now it's gone. And so I think, because that's a combo-focused card, I'm probably going to have to figure out some way to capitalize on this. So I'm going to choose the Azazel.
Azazel. And then we're going to go into combat. And we'll swing 10 and burn the Guardian out of the way.
Dead.
And dead. And 10 more damage, down to 20.
Go.
And then at that point, we pass turn.
Yep. Draw.
Lapis Darkstorm. Being able to cast you off Regalia was a great idea. I love it.
So good. But I did find something decent off the draw.
The Morning Angel. See, this is pretty good. I did just send a bunch of your strangers to the grave.
Only issue is that I do not see a Magna's Angel right now, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's all fine and dandy because we're going to tap for a stone. Good thing I did not keep that Azazel in hand.
Yes, that is very good. There is no black in that hand.
This is not the best I've seen, but it's fine. With that, I think we're just going to pass turn. I think I'm going to hedge my bets at this point.
Sounds good. Recover. If I can. It'll let me. There we go. And so at this point in time, we're going to talk about how knowing your deck and kind of like playing around some things, because you might have thought, like, again, why didn't he just play that Yggdrasil last turn, right? Like, why tap out to put him in such an awkward position? And the reason why is kind of because of some of the things that we have in hand here, which I'm going to talk about here in just a second. Draw to play.
And now having the mana open for your Judgment next turn is also really nice because you already have the Limit Broken Sylvia. You've put me to literally half my life with just one Sylvia. Second should be able to close out the game, given the knowledge you have right now.
And even then, we don't really need to worry about that particularly because we have a lot of things that we can do in the meantime.
Like the Blazer?
We have a Yggdrasil.
Okay.
So we're going to go find a World Ender, right? So like we're trying to capitalize on the fact that he only has one card in his hand, right? So the first thing that we're going to do before we do anything else, now that the Yggdrasil resolves, I would imagine, is we're going to try to say, we're going to tell Mike he is going to die this turn if he doesn't do something. And so then it becomes up to Mike to tell us whether or not he has something, at which point in time we just close out the game, right? So we're going to swing Sylvia.
Yep, taking the damage with the Morning Angel.
Yep, and then down to 10.
Yep, I go to 10.
And then this is what I'm talking about, where we're going to tell Mike this is the bait out to see what happens, right? Because if he has it, awesome. If he doesn't, we're still in a pretty good shape because next turn we're going to get to flip to go Lapis. This is a World Ender. Or not even.
World Ender casting is fine.
World Ender casting is fine. The game is now over. We're going to call double limit break of Lenneth and Blazer.
Yep. And I'm assuming you're floating.
We're going to float double black.
Yep.
We're going to cast a Blazer with the double black.
Well, one of the
or one of the two blacks.
Yeah.
Cool. We're going to then cast a Dark Summoning with the other black. Good?
Yep. Searching for our Slaughter, I assume.
We're going to go ahead and grab another Blazer.
Another Blazer.
And so at this point in time, grabbing the other Blazer is the safety strat. Because at this point in time, Mike is probably aware of what we're going to do. He has chosen not to cancel any of this stuff. So we feel pretty comfortable in what we're about to do. but we want to have a backup just in case. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and cast Art of Slaughter.
And in response to that, just to make sure that I end the game with an empty board and hand, cast the Gatekeeper.
Oh my gosh! So we're just gonna
yeah.
sacrifice the Blazer for lethal there and burn him out. But the backup strategy there was to grab the second Blazer because we have a Dark Alice in hand. So the reason here is because we want to set it up so that Mike is very much on the back foot. He hasn't been projecting cancel. We feel pretty comfortable here. Blazer's Art of Slaughter plus Blazer, Minion of Lapis at this point is a 2-card lethal because it is a burn spell for 12. If for some reason Mike had something in there to be able to pop the Blazer in response or anything else, we wanted to be able to have a surefire 1-2 punch to be able to put him down to lethal next turn with Blazer, with another Blazer and a Dark Alice. Like that again, Dark Alice's effect does say banish as part of the effect, which means that she will trigger Blazer, which means that Dark Alice is now a burn spell. Not only is she a draw spell or a protection spell or a graveyard spell or anything else, she's also a burn spell. So
Dark Alice seems like a really good card.
Seems like a really good card. So we're gonna go back to that's our 2 games. We're gonna go back to kind of having me and Mike talking here real quick. Whoop and hoop. And so this has been Force of Will as a format as a game has had eras where turning things sideways has been an effective strategy. Like a deck that is just turn things sideways the game. However,
I think the last time we really saw that was probably Keurig.
Yeah,
I don't think it was a definitive turn things sideways. Like Melgus, people want to say it is. Melgus is just a combo deck.
Yeah, it's just a combo deck. It's not really a turn things sideways deck. It can. I mean, you can build it. Like early Melgus was a turn things sideways deck, right? But like the Melgus had to adapt, and here's the reason why I want to talk about how that's kind of changed and why this Gil Lapis aggro deck, this burn deck, is kind of a good Gil Lapis is in general as a ruler is a good example of like how aggro decks kind of need to function now in Force of Will, particularly because of the dawn of all this very, very low costed removal that has come in, as well as tempo based removal that has become much better in Force of Will's history in recent year. Turn things sideways decks were always very, very good because the only real tempo cards we had were bounces. Like tempo resonators were all bounces, which against a turn things sideways deck with swiftness isn't great because your opponent's just going to replay them and keep the pressure on you, right? Now, Force of Will has good tempo-based removal that's actually removal and has much more efficient removal suite in the spell package that could be used by a lot of different decks, right? One such example that popped up in Minneapolis weekend was Optical Camouflage. It was one of the 2 cards from Ghost in the Shell that people thought this is going to have an impact. Minneapolis was the first time we really got to see that, but it's a clear example. It is a 1-drop bounce in a format that doesn't have a lot of swiftness that any deck can play. Because to be perfectly honest...
Another big thing about it is the fact that a lot of cards were focused on the graveyard. If you don't put them into the graveyard, what's the deck supposed to do?
Right. So, like, in looking at how this Gil Lapis aggro, burn grow, whatever it is kind of different than those turn things sideways decks, is its ability to pivot from being very, very fierce aggro to tempo to hold your ground setup kind of style. Its primary focus is gotta go fast, right? We're playing Sylvias, we're playing Blazers for burn package, everything else. But the support suite around that is to make up for the deficiency that those kind of decks used to have. Like, and even if we lose Dark Alice, this deck still gets Percival, which is really, really good. Probably one of the best Percivals, if not, I think Green Percival and this Percival are probably the best. Particularly because it just becomes like, hey, do you want to have a card in your graveyard? Would you like it back? Cool. It can even cycle itself, by the way. So Black Percival means you technically can't ever deck out. Just saying. Just by itself. But I think it's important to recognize that, you know, if you want to go aggressive, if you're trying to race to the finish, you can't just turn things sideways anymore if you want to be super successful. And you also have to be thinking of, like, it's turned from a sprint to an obstacle course. If we're thinking again in the school theming, right? Like, aggro matchups, like rush down matchups used to be these like dead sprints. Whose Swifty boys are bigger, who can get first strike, you know, that kind of stuff. But like, aggro matchups now are an obstacle course where you have to be able to look ahead, see what's coming, and pick the best play line to be around it to set yourself up for success. And that's why I think I wanted to talk about this, you know, run this tonight, especially because there's been a lot of interest in Gil Lapis. And so you just kind of, I've seen some players very much do an all-in on Sylvia package, and I'm like, but what if Sylvia's not there? What if your Sylvias get answered? You need to have something else. And I think we saw that a little bit in Minneapolis for the Gil Lapis players that we put on stream. That, you know, the primary win con didn't show up or struggled to show up, and moments where they could have capitalized, if not just a little bit better planning or better consideration of what the circumstances were or everything else, or even just better understanding of their cards, turned into losses. I think Kevin's a good sport, and so I know he won't mind me talking about this. Kevin from Geektopia. We put him on against Ryan Miles, and in game 3, he took game 1 against a Brunhild Ultra deck in 3 turns. As the Gil Lapis player, he took it, which is what that deck can do, absolutely. But then in game 2, it was kind of a back and forth. The Gil Lapis deck didn't really show up, but then in game 3, not under even the simpleness of not quite realizing, getting kind of stuck in the race to the finish and not seeing it as an obstacle course, kind of cost Kevin the game, because there was a moment where he played the he knew that a turn 1 on the draw Sylvia was bad news for the Brunhild deck. Straight up bad news. And like, a Sylvia on board against Brunhild is probably going to stay there forever. Like, unless because you just pick everything off so easily. Kevin played the turn 1 World Ender and chose to double limit break rather than do what we did tonight of, like, he limit broke Gil Lapis, which, if you had stopped and think about it, in that matchup is not anything you're going to be able to take advantage of in the first 4 turns, which, if you're thinking about it, is the time that you're going to win that game.
Imagine thinking about turn 4 against Ultra decks.
Right. So, like, in that scenario, it being more considerate and considering not a race, but considering it as an obstacle course, the better play line would have been to do like we did, of stack first choice of look at top 3, stack second choice of calling a limit break. And then if he had done that, he actually would have seen a Sylvia in the top 3 cards that he could have limit broken and played on turn 1 against Ryan. But in the focus of race to the finish and not kind of slowing down and saying, wait a minute, I am an aggro deck, but I need to be able to have options, it played out in that way. And that's why we have these conversations, right? It's why we plan for these things. It's why we talk about this stuff. So it's our hope that in showing you this and showing you how the deck operates tonight and talking through the scenario, that you can apply it yourself, right? Because having multiple options, having multiple play lines, being recognizant of the play lines and not putting blinders on, allows you to make those decisions that keep you in the game and maybe help you find lethal before your opponent does.
Jeremy, can you put your blinders on again real quick?
Nope.
I'll do it for you.
There you go. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. It was definitely very good, right? It was Matt, you're absolutely right. The Gil Lapis deck that he brought was really, really solid. You can absolutely have a solid deck and not and get pigeonholed and get kind of single track minded to not spot the lethal, not spot the race to the finish, right?
It's also just generally hard to think about that especially like going into this format and going into that tournament. Kevin knew that he was unfavored against most of the Ultra decks just because of the speed that Gil Lapis tries to operate at. So a lot of that probably comes down to the pressure of knowing that situation and trying to make a name for the deck, which obviously he did in the round 1 where he took it off of Ryan. But
yeah. And the other thing is too is to speak to this is we've talked about this in the teacher's lounge, and now applying it to here, right? Of taking the knowledge even from your last game in a match.
Yep.
Like you're playing a best of 3, so like think about what went well in my last game. How do I make sure that happens again in this game? And so, that's part of the lesson planning, right? That's part of what do I do in this scenario? I can apply what went well before to plan to do that again. And that's how you build skill. That's how you build stuff up. So with that, I think, you have any kind of closing thoughts? I'm looking at the chat here, seeing if anybody has any kind of closing questions or anything.
Yeah, the one thing I haven't been doing is looking at chat because I've had my screens up. But
sure.
Yeah, the biggest takeaway definitely is that, when you're playing, it's been a long time since Force Wheels had like a really, really focused, aggressive meta.
Sure.
Again, I mentioned before, Kirik has been the last one that really did anything, and the game's power level has spiked quite a bit since Kirik was around. So going into next formats where we're going to have, obviously, Gil Lapis's burn decks available. We're going to still have access to like big stuff in Dark Alice. I remember facing in the tournament, like somebody was turboing out the White Wolf with Perseus Call to Action and swinging for 2k against me. So like, there's a lot of really, really aggressive. Yeah, I know. I got drained for 2k. There's a lot of really, really solid tempo options going forward. And it's been a really long time since Force Wheel's been like a tempo to mid-range type game. Once it starts going back to mid-range, I'm getting into my comfort zone, but also I have my invite, so I'm not incentivized to play right now.
Sure.
So if I miss a mid-range format because I got my invite in a combo format, I'm going to be mad. But all's well that ends well, I guess, really. I'm just hoping to see, I'm hoping to see games last minimum 4 to 5 turns.
Sure.
Obviously, if somebody's an aggro deck and they want to end the game earlier, there's enough counterplay, there's enough removal to make it so that you can go longer than that.
Right.
But the biggest thing is that we see how much from not only from this game but also from my tournament matches, we know that decks cannot be one-note decks, which is
absolutely,
which is kind of against my philosophy because I really like making gimmicky fun decks, but that's besides the point. Who doesn't like making a gimmick fun deck? But if you're trying to play competitively, if you're trying to get the edge in a competitive format, your deck needs to have you can
versatility.
Be really strong. Yep. Obviously, with the deck, you kind of want like hierarchy, sort of like a hierarchy of what your deck wants to do. Like your most basic need is like play cards on curve or have something to interact with your opponent. Next up, aggressive strategy. Next up, a small mini combo within the deck somewhere. Just know what the most important things in your deck are, know what your main strategies are, know what you want to focus on, and then have things to the side that kind of just back that up a little bit. Because if I was playing against the skill Lapis deck that you were playing, and you didn't Darkstorm me twice, I would have been in a much better position than I was.
Right, and even looking at the board state, knowing that I had the ability to, like that turn, I could have played to go get another. Played to go get another World Ender and just like a step, like instead of trying to push pressure or like gain advantage, I could have like just sat stabilized and try to like push for better options later. Like that was a decision tree that I had to make there, right? And so that ended up like thinking about the matchup, looking at the cards that I'd already seen in the previous game, looking at the colors that you had available, looking at what your potential answers to me were, and the value that I generate off of it for in tempo and like value helped make that decision to just go, you know what, we're just going to double Darkstorm here. Like, we're going to commit to there's one body on board. We're going to rip Mike down to one card in hand. That is actually what's going to secure us the game here, because it's not what we normally would do in that situation, I don't think. So to speak to, this is great. We're getting a bunch of questions like right here at the end, so I don't mind keeping it going. So
that's exactly what I want.
Tommy Rourke is asking, how do you know when to turn the corner and ditch plan A to do plan B versus opponent? I think it becomes a question of, is the pressure that your like who's in tempo lead, one, and is what your opponent doing setting them up to disrupt your game plan?
Yep.
Right. And I think if what your opponent is doing in regards to he sense of like, if you're a burn deck, when do you stop chucking spells and worry about resonators on board, etc. I think the question becomes, what are the resonators on board?
Do they threaten you?
Do they threaten you? And with what they're presenting in terms of tapping their stones to put pressure on board, yada yada, is it actually going to stop you from killing them?
I actually have a pretty good example of this.
Go ahead, go for it.
Because it was actually something that I noticed very quickly in my top 4 match against Paul Martinson in Minnesota. Because obviously everybody's like, oh, turn 3 combo deck, you're doing turn 3 combo, you win. It's like, our game went to game 7 before we started setting up our combos. Because
or turn 7.
Like,
yeah,
turn 7. Game 7. No, but we went to like turn 7 in our game 2 because we both knew that we wanted to leave mana up against the other one. Like putting Calcuts on board, holding out for Dark Alices, holding removal for Dark Alices, holding on to the piers to get rid of the altars. There's just so much that goes back and forth, and there's so much disruption for everything. And every turn, each of us always ended with a light and a windstone up, because having that availability, like you have to kind of, like obviously the game plan, we know that the Sigurd combo will win the game,
right?
But as long as your opponent has threats against you, disruption against you, anything that you could think they could have, like I play the game thinking worst case scenario.
Yep.
Because
Absolutely.
when you do that, you're always pleasantly surprised when your options go off.
It's one of the reasons why Awakening of the Winged Lord made it into a lot of the lists. Not Mike's. Mike was sideboarding them like a madman. Paid off because you weren't playing defense stances, so that makes sense. But like, it's one of the reasons why Awakening of the Winged Lord came into play, because it was the epitome of I would call it a feeler card. Yep. Where like in this matchup, the game plan is to play the Cancel War, right? That's the game plan A. The game plan is to shut down your opponent and everything else. But like, if both players are sitting there, you need to be able to still put pressure on. You need a plan B.
That's kind of where
you need a plan B.
Where Chant of Tranquility came into play in our match a lot, actually.
Yeah, you use it as a feeler to be like, is this going to resolve? Is this, so
if it resolves, you're stone ahead, which automatically puts you ahead of them in terms of the Cancel War.
But if they cancel it, then you're like, okay, move on, right? It was the same with Awakening of the Winged Lord. Like, we're leaving Will up to be able to play Kaguya. That's our game plan A. Our opponent is passing to us, so then it becomes, okay, if we cast this and he cancels it, what is that actually threatening? Is that threatening us at all? It's not, because this is a card that if it resolves, if it gets canceled, okay, whatever. We were holding up Kaguya Will anyway. If it does resolve, great, we get advantage off of it. So it becomes the question of, what is my opponent threatening, and is it actually a threat? Because there are some times where players can psych themselves out of, oh man, but what if they have this card? And then you go, okay, what does that actually do to you? Like, oh man, they put a body on board. Yeah, but they tapped out and you've got 1,500 burn damage in their hand and they're at 16. And you're at 28. Okay, like, is that resonator really important when you're leaving yourself to only need to find one more damage somewhere? Excuse me.
Breathe, Jeremy, breathe.
Big dad energy, is that what you were saying?
No, I said breathe, Jeremy, breathe, but also I've been telling Jeremy how much he exudes big dad energy, and you know what, that's fine. He's got 2 kids. What can you do? So, that to answer your question, it comes down to, what are they threatening, and is it actually a threat? Like, making threat assessment becomes a really big matter, because if it is actually a threat, then you turn the corner, right? Then you need to adjust. But if you can't, you're probably screwed. Ferret the Fuzzy Noodle just started playing this game yesterday, and I absolutely love it.
welcome. You started playing yesterday and you found our channel. That's awesome to hear. Happy to have you here. Hope you enjoy.
Good step one.
Good step one.
I love you.
If your opponent is Mike, then you're screwed anyway. That's dependent on if Mike actually is. That's dependent on if Mike is trying or not. Matt Seymour. And then I do want to talk about one last thing. We have seen 2 spoiler cards in the form of the Buy a Box promo and the PR promo. Yeah. Two 1-drop removal spells that seem to complement each other very well. The Twin Swords of Oborozuki, it would appear to be, which is kind of cool because even in the lore, we know that there's the Sword of the Half Moon and the Sword of the Full Moon. So it's kind of cool to see those kind of come back.
Oh, I love these cards.
They're really cool. I think they're really cool. I think they're really cool design space. So how would one play against Control with Prisia? Not going all in. I think
play the Springs version. That's all I can say.
Hot Springs version for sure.
Hot Springs is the most versatile version of Prisia that you can play. Having immediate answers to whatever your opponent does, having a way to incrementally and for free putting bodies on board from hand that interact with each other is just bar none one of the best ways to play her.
Uncancelable.
Uncancelable, yeah. It's hard to play Pierre can hit it, but whatever. But even so, you just play a thing off of in response because it doesn't have something.
Right.
The biggest thing for Prisia is that you can't really go with the all-in beast tempo package unless you're like backing it up with something big.
Right. Which is what we're, kind of talking about in the sense of like Force of Will, especially now, has the aggro decks cannot be turn things sideways. Like you can't have that anymore. Which can be frustrating. But at the same time, when Mike eventually decides to come back, but can still be good in the form of, what are you going to do about it? Or in terms of longevity of your deck, because you're not just a 1-note deck. So that's kind of what we would talk about for Prisia. I think we're starting to drop frames, which is a good signal for us to call it for the night. My internet appears to be crashing.
Can you see me now, Jeremy?
I can see you now. I hope you can hear me. My internet appears to be crashing. Can
you see me again?
Yep. Yeah. My internet's crashing. So we're going to end it here for the night. Thank you all so much for watching.
I've been able to hear you, but for a little bit, it sounded like you were...
Yeah, my internet appears to be crashing. So we're going to go ahead and call it here for tonight. I hope you guys have all enjoyed it. This has been Lesson Planning. Want to go ahead and support us, click that join button down below and be sure to subscribe. And until next time, we'll see you next time. Class dismissed. Have a good night, everybody.